Hi, I'm Kathy and welcome to my channel. Is it really harder to learn a new language as we get older? Well, I put it to the test when I started learning French 4 years ago, and it started me on a journey that's truly changed my life. Today, I'm sharing exactly how I learned French after the age of 60, the victories and the challenges, embarrassing mistakes I've made, the wonderful adventures it has led to, and why it's never too late to start. Plus, it's a great boost to brain health and longevity. If you're new here, welcome. I talk about feeling beautiful, living a life of purpose, and thriving as a woman over 50. So if that sounds good to you, please hit the subscribe button. Many people believe that learning a new language is too difficult or not possible as we age, but this mindset can hold you back. Believe me, I wondered if it would be possible for me. But I had a dream of one day spending 6 months or a year living in Paris. I've always loved France, the food, the fashion, the culture. My dream of living there started years ago when I was yearning for the freedom of retirement and imagined myself spending a leisurely morning reading the newspaper and sipping my coffee at a Parisian cafe while miraculously absorbing the French language. I began sharing my dream out loud with my husband and my friends. And then during the pandemic, when everything slowed down and my path to retirement became clearer, my idea of learning French started to germinate. So, where to begin? A lot of people use language learning apps like Duolingo and Babbel, but personally, I believe these are good supplements, but nothing replaces the strong foundation of a sequential foreign language course if you really want to learn a strong foundation in grammar, build your vocabulary, and ultimately have a conversation or become fluent in a foreign language. I signed up for an online beginning French class geared toward adult learners with Alliance Française, which is an international organization that promotes the French language and French culture. In the United States alone, they actually have 110 chapters in 45 states and places all over the world too. The classes at my Alliance Française meet weekly for 90 minutes, and there's a minimal amount of homework. So that's how I started. It was a low-level commitment, and I just kept signing up and going back. Bit by bit, I learned the verb conjugations and built my vocabulary. Because Alliance Française courses are 10 weeks in length with breaks in between and longer breaks in the summer, I decided to supplement classes with the basic online Babbel subscription to have some way of keeping my language learning going. I would show up occasionally also to Alliance Française events in my area, but otherwise I didn't do much else right away. I just kept going, and bit by bit, through repetition over time, I added to my vocabulary and improved my speaking. After a couple of years of this, I realized that my husband wasn't ready to retire, so my dream of becoming fluent in French by living in France for 6 months to a year or more seemed far off, if ever. So, as a substitute, with my husband's support, of course, I decided to go to France for a month by myself and study French. And that's where the life-changing aspect of my French language journey truly began, and I'll talk more about that shortly. There's nothing like immersion to speed up language acquisition. I decided that instead of Paris, I would study in Lyon, where I had never been. I know a woman who spoke highly of Lyon and a language school there where she'd studied. So rather than exhaustively researching options, I just signed up for the school and went to Lyon for a month. I'll leave a link in the description for this school and other resources I mentioned in this video. There's an international model for European language learning called the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. So if you have heard of levels of language acquisition like A1, A2, B2, and the like, you may have seen like these on the language learning apps. These apply to a method of teaching and assessing for all languages in Europe. Similar approaches also exist in other languages. The advantage of this is you can take a class where you live and pick it up right at the same level in France or any country where French is taught. I had a seamless transition from my classes with Alliance Française at home to my classes in Lyon. For 4 weeks, I had school in the morning during the week, and the rest of my time was my own. I loved my time in Lyon. It's the third largest city in France behind Paris and Marseille. It's just beautiful and has a lot to offer, including the distinction of being the gastronomic capital of France. But what really made my experience and cemented my commitment to learning French were 3 key things. 1, for the first time in my life, I spent an extensive period abroad, all on my own. I've always been an independent and bold person, but having been married for over 30 years, it's easy to stay in your lane when it comes to life decisions and problem solving. Traveling solo was profoundly freeing. I did my own thing, solved my own problems, and grew as a person. The second thing is, with 4 weeks of immersion, I was able to learn enough French to skip 4 10-week sessions at Alliance Française, which gave me a huge boost to my confidence and propelled me forward. And third, I made French friends, real friends who I keep in touch with and visit every year. It was funny how it happened. When my Airbnb landlord welcomed me to his Lyon apartment and showed me around, he said that he and his girlfriend and other friends were going to a free concert later that night at the Théâtre Romain, which is a stunning outdoor amphitheater with a really cool museum worth visiting. And he invited me to go along to this concert. It was so much fun. And the next day I ran into Régis, that's his name, at a local marché, and he invited me to have lunch with him and his girlfriend at her house. And then a day or two later, I ran into them just by chance in Old Lyon, and I ended up taking them to dinner. And later in the week, I ran into them yet again at a public pool. We all decided it must be fate. I ended up hosting a dinner party with them at the apartment a few days before I left, and the friendships were cemented. I also made sure to see other friends and my husband's relative in Paris when I visited, and those relationships have blossomed as well. Having real French friends and relatives to see is a big motivator for me to keep going with learning French. I want to make them proud on my next visit. After returning from Lyon, which was about 1.5 years into my French language journey, I was still mostly a beginner, and I couldn't have a fluid conversation quite yet, but I'd made a lot of progress. So I decided to take more steps. In addition to my weekly classes at Alliance Française and my Babbel online drills, which I honestly have not used that much, I signed up for Babbel Live, which allows me to take unlimited 1-hour classes online with a maximum of 6 students. I think it's a pretty good program, and it's helped me with my grammar review, vocabulary, and with practice speaking. I also started listening to podcasts like the Duolingo French podcast, News in Slow French, and others that I'll link below that are designed for intermediate speakers. If the stuff is too hard, for me at least, it's been demoralizing. So look for podcasts at your level. I kept these things going for another year, and then I went to Paris to study at a language school for a month. By that point, my French had advanced to the B1 level, or should I say I stretched to the B1 level. But I did it. I loved my alone time in Paris and my visits with French friends and relatives, and I insisted on speaking French when I went shopping or to museums, and it boosted my confidence when people complimented my French. I returned home to continue my weekly classes at Alliance Française and Babbel Live classes. Once you get beyond the basics, it takes a long time to slog through the intermediate phase. In fact, once you enter the intermediate level, it can get discouraging because, at least for me, discernible progress felt slower. In fact, it was slower. There's a lot of vocabulary, locking in new verb tenses, and then there's learning how to say French things the way the French people say it, and to be able to understand when you watch TV or someone speaks to you. At that point, 2.5 years into my French study, I was not yet regularly watching French TV series, movies, or YouTube videos. I found it exhausting and discouraging at that point. They just speak really fast and they use a lot of slang. Along the way, you're also bound to make some mistakes. Here's a funny story. I'd gotten into the habit of saying merci beaucoup instead of merci beaucoup. That is, until my Lyonnese friends, of course they were chuckling, pointed out that beaucoup is heard by the French as cute butt. I got red in the face for a minute, but these kinds of mistakes are understood and tolerated and all part of learning a new language. You just have to be bold and keep trying when you can and take counsel from French speakers. The key to progress is to keep at it. In every class, I would write down new vocabulary. But really, am I going to memorize that stuff after class? For the most part, no, is the answer. But I think writing helps to cement the word in the brain, and somehow those words come back around. And some stick and some don't. But then if you keep going, they come around again and more stick and so on. I just keep going. Sometimes you forget stuff. Sometimes you have to relearn it. But eventually, that sticks too. Last fall, I went to France for a third time for a month, again studying at the same school, which I love. This time was a turning point. While I'm still at the B level, it was much easier for me, and for the first time I was truly able to speak to shopkeepers and carry on a relatively fluid conversation in French with my French friends. Even though I still make a lot of errors, they could understand me and they were honestly impressed with my progress. I love the feeling of thinking and speaking and yes, shopping in another language. So if you're curious about luxury French skincare, which is very affordable in France compared to the US, check out this video. Now that I've gotten this far after 4 years of relatively casual effort at home with bursts of immersion, I'm adding in more methods at home to improve my French more rapidly. The hurdle I want to get over now is learning how to say things the way a fluent speaker would say them. A great method for speaking practice is finding a French-speaking friend or acquaintance to speak with on a regular basis, online or in person. I'm now watching more movies, TV series, and videos in French. I slow down the speed to 75% so I can more easily follow the speaking, and I use French subtitles. I also found a great French tutor for weekly sessions on an app called Preply, similar to italki, where you can find French tutors and other languages also online at a variety of price points. My tutor is nudging me to step up consumption of spoken and written French to help me get a better feel for the sentence construction and more automatically understanding the language than just following the grammar rules. He's introduced me to great online resources for this, and soon I'll also be taking a workshop with Alliance Française that involves reading a novel and discussing it. Learning a new language is not easy, but you can learn to speak confidently in another language after 60 if you work steadily at it. Trust that progress is being made even when you feel discouraged, and draw upon a bank of language learning activities as time, resources, and skill level allow. You don't have to study for hours a day to make progress. Just a little bit, most days of the week, adds up over time. I may never realize my dream of living in France for an extended period, but I'm very happy with my language learning progress, and I'm going to keep going. It's challenging my mind, broadening my cultural awareness, and bringing wonderful new people into my life. And my trips to study French and experiencing the lovely country of France have been a special bonus. Now I would love to hear from you. Have you ever tried learning a new language? Have you been thinking about it? What tools and tricks do you have to share? Let me know in the comments, and also if you found this video helpful. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content on Thriving Gracefully. Merci beaucoup et à bientôt. See you next time.